Hello, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the Staffing Matters and Urgency Committee. There are no apologies to record as everybody that is expected is here, so welcome to you. First item is declarations of interest. Just give a couple of seconds in case there are any additional declarations. Councillor de Gaulle.
Yes, just it's not a prejudicial interest, but in the interest of transparency in relation to item 6, I am a contributor to the North Yorkshire Pensions Fund, and so I'm a member of the authority, but that obviously doesn't relate to this. It's relating to contributions from our staff members.
Previous employment, you mean?
Yes. This is employment where contributions paid to the North Yorkshire Pension Fund.
Thank you. Councillor Hook.
Yes, and again, for interests of transparency, I'm on the North Yorkshire Pension Board and they'll be administering quite a lot of that scheme as well. So I thought I'd better report it.
And similarly, just similar to Councillor de Gaulle, I am a former member of the North Yorkshire Pension Fund through my time working as a teacher in North Yorkshire. So with those, and just to check with Helen on those, as former members and not current members, and not for York Council, these wouldn't apply to us.
They wouldn't apply, but it's North Yorkshire Pensions Fund.
Sorry, just to confirm that not for York Council, but York Council obviously use North Yorkshire Pensions Fund, but because you are not current pension fund board members, etc., that will be fine.
Thank you very much. So we'll go on to item 2, which is the exclusion of press and public. So this is asking us to consider excluding the press and public if we discuss annexes A, B, C and D to agenda item 9 on the grounds that they contain information relating to individuals and the financial affairs of particular persons, and that's on the redundancy, pension or exit discretion item. Could I see if colleagues are happy to agree that at that time? I can see some nods around the room. Thank you. So we'll consider that consensus if we when we move on to agenda item 9. So that takes us on to item 3, which is the minutes of the previous meeting that are included on pages 3 to 6. And there's one amendment that I'd like to suggest. So paragraph 51, which is regards the local government pension scheme discretions policy, incorrectly states that we resolved to approve it, where in fact we resolved to defer it to today's meeting. So if the minutes could just be amended to reflect that. I'll give a couple of seconds in case there are any questions. Councillor Kilbane.
Thanks, Chair. Just in paragraph 50, I raised the issue of around over 70% of individuals leaving for no reason, and what I was looking for was better clarification as to why they left, as opposed to where they were moving on to. So if we can change that to establishing why they left, and also raise the issues of our poor monitoring of employing people with disabilities, and I gave the example of there being it's not measured against the background measure for people with disabilities in York, as it would be for people from Black and minority ethnic communities. And I'd like that noted as well, that we need better information on our employment of people with disabilities.
Thank you. So just check in with Helen or Robert. Is that okay? I'm seeing nods, so that will get noted. Thank you very much. So with the amendment and then that to note, just check whether councillors are happy with those amended minutes. Again, I can see some nods. Councillor Kilbane, happy with that? Yeah, great. Thank you very much. So that then moves us on to agenda item 4, public participation. And we have no public participants on Zoom today. We have one in person, Gwen Swinburne, who's registered to speak on a variety of matters, particularly agenda item 6, the discretions policy. And you'll know that you have 3 minutes to talk to us.
Thank you, Chair.
When you start.
Can I just start on a procedural matter? Sorry, Helen, you're so new. There's no declaration of interest from the staff on this item to do with the pension. I just don't, I think at some point we've got to sort this out once and for all, that there is, you know, staff declare when there's an issue that affects them as well as members. But can I just leave that on the table? Thank you. Chair, may I thank you for stepping in to halt the report being decided by the Chief Operating Officer under his own delegations last month. The rush ahead of returning to face-to-face meetings was reminiscent of the 1-minute corridor meeting that led to the first public interest report. Also, I appreciate the changes made to smarten up the report, but it remains not fit for purpose. I have written to each member regarding detailed concerns regarding this scheme that will be of profound help to wealthy staff seeking to avoid tax and national insurance contributions, but hopeless for the front line. In summary, the report is entirely deficient, opaque, and in my view, seeking to obfuscate the costs and benefits to wealthy and poor staff, the true provenance and costs of the scheme to this council, the pension fund moving forward, and the loss of the National Insurance Fund to the state. Specifically, the lack of an equalities impact assessment masks the fact that the wealthy staff appear to be able to exploit this tax loophole to infinity, whilst poorer staff will be unable to participate because they can't afford it. Further, the report does not mention the risks, what they actually are, the risk to this authority, for example, if we have to backfill the pension fund in the future. Chair, the staff have not explained why there is only one monopoly supplier, which party will pay for them. Mr. Floyd's report does not mention the net profit, even in percentage terms, that this council will gain, or will it all simply be absorbed by the monopoly supplier? I am all for encouraging those least able to access additional pension contributions, but this isn't about them, is it? May I ask that you defer this once again to get a proper report on current and future financial implications for us, the fund, the low paid and high paid, why there is no ceiling for contributions if that's the case, why this one supplier, why no equalities impact assessment, why no appendices with the proposed scheme. May I finally ask that as the head of paid service, can he be expected to make a good example by providing complete reports, bothering to sign off, and list the accountable specialist staff by name, as has always been the case?
Thank you very much for your comments, and we'll take them into account when we consider the relevant agenda items, and particularly agenda item 6. And I'll send through that initial query that you made to officers as well to consider that.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. That then takes us on to agenda item 5. At this point of the meeting, I'd also like to mention that as well as Helen as head of HR joining us, Janie Berry, monitoring officer, is joining us virtually. So if there were a question for Janie on a relevant agenda item, she's available to answer that, although Helen will be presenting the reports. So item 5 is changes to membership of committees and joint committees. I don't know if, Robert, you wanted to mention anything to introduce the paper, or whether Helen is doing that.
Sorry, Chair, I can.
Yeah, yes, please.
Sorry, I've got a bit of a chest infection, so apologies. As you are aware, Annual Council in May 2021 set the appointments to outside bodies, and during the year we've been requested to accept a change, and the change is detailed as at paragraph 2, which is to appoint Councillor Fitzpatrick as a substitute member for the West Yorkshire Combined Authority Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Members of the committee this evening are asked to consider the change for the remainder of this municipal year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'll just check in case there are any questions, but we have the recommendation in front of us. So if I could see nods, if we're happy to accept that, so I can see a clear consensus. Thank you very much. That then takes us on to agenda item 6, the amendment to the pension discretions policy, and I'll ask Helen to introduce it.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, this looks for the amendment to the local government pension scheme discretions policy, which is formally approved by yourselves. And this is looking for discretion to implement a shared cost additional voluntary contribution scheme. This shared cost additional voluntary shared cost additional voluntary contribution scheme is a benefit available for our employees. These were set up in 2016. Many councils have actually worked on these and actually implemented these. In terms of locally, Bradford Council have done this, Leeds Council have done this, all the Tees Valley councils have done this, including Darlington, where I was formerly from. Newcastle have also done that, and North Yorkshire have their report going to their committees in the coming weeks. So that was an answer to your question directly, Councillor Hook, for that. What this report does, and I'll try and answer some of Swinburne's queries that have also come in here in addition to what I've presented in my report. Formally, this report was presented in January, where we quite rightly said in the minutes that this was deferred until we could have further information and review the technical advice, etc., and also the authorisations. So the technical advice and authorisation for the scheme still rests with the Section 151 officer. And obviously Director of Governance, Janie, who we've got on the line, has given advice in terms of the governance behind the scheme, and Staffing Matters and Urgency Committee are authorised to endorse the implementation, because I know that there were some concerns around this, but essentially we're looking for the LGPS discretions to be amended, which come further in the report. As you know, many members already have the ability to implement AVCs, which are additional voluntary contributions. And our provider is Prudential. This is simply extending that to allow for it to be salary sacrifice. Its salary sacrifice scheme has been approved by PS Tax, which promotes the AVC-wise. That's the model that they actually use, and they are the only provider online. That's been confirmed, and they work directly with HMRC to actually produce this. As I say, it was in 2016 when they started implementing it for councils and a number of public sectors. We wouldn't remove the original AVC offer. Quite a lot of people do move over to that simply because of the salary sacrifice that's then on offer, but there is the ability to maintain just simply the AVC-wise account that they have. Alternatively, they could run two accounts, one with a salary sacrifice element and one with an AVC. It's very unusual, however, that is a possibility of that, or it could be frozen. In terms of one of the questions that was raised about capping, there is a cap. It's at £40,000, and that cannot be done in a lump sum basis. It must be done by salary sacrifice. So it's whatever could be salary sacrifice. So you wouldn't ordinarily have £40,000, well, not in this council, certainly wouldn't have £40,000 to sacrifice on a monthly basis. It's a maximum of £40,000 per annum. So hopefully that clears that element up. It does say shared cost AVC. Obviously within the report I've put within there that it isn't actually a shared cost, it's just a terminology that's used, and that's in line with the local government pension scheme and the regulations. In reality, it doesn't cost the council anything, and I've outlined that in paragraphs 11 as part of the report of the way it works, and the employee needs to pay £1 per month, or a minimum of £1 for a month, as part of the payroll deduction within there. There was some, I'm going to just pick up some of the costs as to why we picked up this scheme. This scheme was is available through a scheme that we already have, which is called VIVUP, which is employee benefits. And this benefit scheme is there the same as other employee salary sacrifice schemes, such as Bike to Work, etc., which we already had in place. And this scheme was available under the ESPO framework, which is something that we can draw down and use. And our entry into this is all being approved by procurement rules and the procurement department as well. So that's all been there. So AVC wise is just one of the benefits that we can drill down from that. There was no separate commercial contract required. And again, I've already mentioned that AVC wise are the only provider of the shared cost AVC. There may be more in the future, but at this point in time, they are still the only ones. In terms of the administration fee, there is an administration fee, not for VIVUP, that is free, and we're able to upload a lot of our employee advice, etc., as a platform for that. But for AVC wise, it's a 4.5% for a fully administrated service. And this is paid for and offset against the employer savings that we will actually receive. So it's not an additional cost. There was an element in my former report that talked about setup fees. we already have set up in terms of payroll. We've already set up AVC. This is simply using another portal. So there isn't excessive costs in terms of our payroll. Apologies, it did say significant. It should have said insignificant. There was no significant costs for our payroll to actually set it up. Yeah, it's managed by a portal. It's 4.5% of the monthly deductions. Now, those deductions may actually vary. An employee can change. They can pay in 1 month, pay in every month, or just pay in amount, but it's always from their salary. So again, they couldn't take a lump sum out of their savings, for instance, and put it in there. It must only be from their salary that's there. And with it being a salary sacrifice, you could never go below national minimum wage. And that is just purely the rules around HMRC and salary sacrifice schemes. So you couldn't deduct that. But again, it's still £40,000 in terms of capped. In terms of the number of employees that we actually have on the scheme, on our AVC scheme is currently 110, which is 3.6% of our overall LGPS members into the North Yorkshire scheme. And that has an annual value of about £3,300. Should we actually get some savings based on that, we would have in around about just shy of £30,000 in terms of employer savings. And the average, the details that we've got, and all these estimates are estimates, they're not based on our actuals. Estimates are around, from ABC wise, they said on average is about £250 per month that an employee would submit. They did say for this area it would likely be less. We haven't got those figures, and that is just an average. But you would save around about the 12% our employees. So the NI benefit is 12% that employees would actually save. There was a question around tax. Employees still pay tax, yes. So it would be paid on the lesser amount, so that would be a lesser tax. There was a question around the apprenticeship levy. The apprenticeship levy is 0.5% of our overall pay bill that we actually pay into our levy. We don't currently use all of our levy funding at the moment, and we actually support other employers where we've got a partnership with up to a maximum transfer. We've got a maximum transfer of the levy of up to 20% of that. But the risk to us in reducing our apprenticeship levy, we're still able to fulfil all of our commitments that we've identified for apprentices going forward. And we've looked at that on a 5-year projection, so we're not concerned about that. I haven't said no risks on the basis that there may be some risks, but there is not a risk. In terms of equality impact assessments, these were done by AVC Wise. They have done those, but we can also do those locally, and we can do those at any point, so we can pick that up. I'm just going to revert back to the main paper. So in terms of the benefits to the council, we have got the savings on the national insurance, which is currently at 13.8%. And then I've also said that the reduction of our levy costs there. What I'm looking for from members is an agreement to the pensions discretion policy at paragraph 15. You can see the details there that we do not currently have contribute to AVCs. But as I said, this is actually just more of a technicality, and we've said that the proposed wording would be around that the council will exercise discretion to allow the local government pension scheme members to contribute to a shared cost salary sacrifice scheme, and obviously that would be subject to meeting the conditions of AVC Wise and the technical aspects of that, and we would not enter into any other AVC. And I think that's it, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll open it for any questions or comments from colleagues. Councillor Hook.
Thank you, Chair. You read in the press about these schemes to save people tax, like the one that made lots of employees become self-employed and then they've suffered and afterwards. Have you got a guarantee from HMRC that they will never come back to recover any of the money that we've saved?
Personally, Councillor Hook, no, I have not got that guarantee, but I have got reassurance the fact that there's a number of councils that have gone through this scheme. It's been approved by HMRC. Other than that, I can't provide a guarantee that they won't do that. No, I've not got that personally, and I don't think they would ever provide that either.
But you have got the approval from HMRC, because yes. I looked on the HMRC website and there was absolutely nothing on it, so it just made me worry.
That's actually on PS Tax website, yes, it's all there, and it's part of their promotional aspects that do say it's all approved by HMRC. Yes.
Councillor Kilbane.
Thanks, Helen. Thanks for the report. This might take a little time while I get my head around it. So it works by people paying the AVCs, which we're pretending are paid by the council. So that's the shared bit, but actually the council doesn't contribute anything. It just processes the payment, right? And that's how we get away with it being called shared. And they pay that as a salary sacrifice before tax. So they save the 20% on tax. That's how it works. Okay. So how much does it cost us? And how does, is it PS, whatever they're called, PS tax? How do they get paid? How do they make their money?
They make their money through the administration fee. So the administration fee of 4.5%, they make their money through that.
So where does that money come from? Who's paying that?
We're paying that through the offsetting against the savings that we'll receive on the national insurance.
And how much do we save?
As I said, that would vary each month depending on how much the employees would actually put in. So we haven't got specific costs going forward.
Okay, so the more the employees put in,
Mhm.
the less NI we pay as employees' contributions.
Yes.
Okay, but the more the employees put in, the more PS tax make.
No, 4.5% is a fixed rate. But sorry, yes, it is. Because
So,
obviously it's 4.5% of whatever the contributions are on a monthly basis.
okay, right, okay. How much is this, do you expect this will cost the Exchequer?
I don't know, I'm sorry, I don't have that figure.
We got ballpark figures? You had some ballpark figures for the numbers that you thought might be signing up to it?
I've got details that I'd put in. So we currently have 110 employees. I said paying into ABC, so that was an annual value of 3,300. And then based on ABC-wise experience, we expect about 90% of those to transfer to the new scheme. And this would result in an immediate annual saving of around about 29,000, just shy of 30,000.
Sorry, I don't understand the relationship between the 110 people paying AVCs, the 3,300 and the 29,000.
That's just based on a figure that ABC-wise give us. And I said earlier that they would on average put in about £250 per month. That isn't about that amount. All we can do is estimate. We haven't.
Sorry, no, it's an even more basic question than that. How do we get from 110 people paying into AVCs? What's the 3,300 figure?
That's the annual value of AVCs.
The annual value to who?
The annual value to their AVC pot.
Right, so we multiply the 3,300 by 110.
Yes.
Okay, and then so that which will, and then the 29,000 figure comes from
The savings, the annual savings that we will make on the scheme.
who will make on the scheme?
Us as an employer.
By not paying national insurance contributions. Yes. Okay, so the more people who put into AVCs, the less money we pay in national insurance, so we make that saving. And the more who put into it, the more money PS tax make on their 4.5% levy. So in terms of the sort of the merry-go-round of money, it just means that the revenue, the state is getting less, and we're making some savings locally, and PS tax are creaming off their bit as well. Okay, right, okay. 110 paying AVCs, out of a workforce of how many?
We've got a workforce, this excludes schools, so it's just over 2,000 employees.
Why have we got so few paying AVCs?
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Sorry, why have we got so few paying AVCs?
It's personal choice, completely personal choice.
Okay, do you think it's because they can't afford it, a lot of the staff?
No, Personally, I haven't got experience of York Council, but I don't think they're promoted very widely.
Okay. Would this scheme encourage low-paid staff to take up AVCs?
It'll be promoted to all employees. Yes, initially in terms of the implementation, should we get approval, we initially go to the people who've currently got AVCs, but then the wider promotion, there's a communications plan and an implementation plan that we also then offer it out to all employees. Because it's a salary sacrifice, as I mentioned before, we would never actually allow people to go less than the national minimum wage. And there's a ready reckoner effectively on the portal, so employees can work out what essentially they can afford. But it's always about being able to save for the future. So it has got a lot of benefits. And what you do put in, it's not like one of the savings schemes where you put something in, but you wouldn't then get it back out. You have that and it could be frozen. You could put one payment in, that could be frozen, and you could then get it at a later, at your retirement.
Do we have any staff that won't be able to afford to put in AVCs because it would take them below minimum wage?
No, because we don't have anybody who's paid below the minimum wage.
But after taking this out as a salary sacrifice, could that push them
I
below?
think it would be very unlikely. So it should be available for all employees.
Okay.
And it's just depending on what they want to what they personally have, their personal circumstances to be able to afford, to be able to put into their pension.
Okay. And the public participant was talking about this would favour those who are on larger salaries over those on low. So we're talking about people who potentially could be getting close to being brought under minimum wage if they make the salary sacrifice. So because if you make the salary sacrifice first, obviously that takes your salary down, doesn't it? You could be below minimum wage. Is it more likely to benefit people who are earning higher wages in the council?
It's not yes, it is, but at the same time, it is access. Everybody's able to access it depending on the means, and this is voluntary. Obviously, it's completely voluntary to
But is it not more likely to be taken up by those who can afford it on higher wages?
Quite probably, yes.
And would that not just mean that those people would get to keep more of their high wage instead of paying to the state?
It could be viewed like that.
Okay. Can you tell me what the union's view on it was, please?
They were supportive of it.
Okay. And why the thing that stood out to me, and this might not be strictly relevant, Chair, so correct me if it's not, was the idea that it doesn't really matter in terms of the apprenticeship levy fund, because we've not got plans to spend it all for the next 5 years. Well, you might not be able to answer this actually, but why is that?
Why are we not spending all the levy
Yeah.
fund? The levy fund, it's quite difficult to actually always do apprentices because the levy fund is only for the training. And obviously we have to find the salary costs for all of the apprentices as well. And that's our pinch point in terms of a council. We haven't necessarily got all the money to provide for the salary as well. There has been lots of rallying about that the apprentice levy funding can be used for staffing elements of it as well, but at this moment in time it is only for the training. It is also quite prohibited in terms of not every single course is available. It's only obviously it's apprentice levy, it's only for apprenticeships, and that does cause problems in some situations because it doesn't cover every course that everybody wants to do. So I can give an example of HR has recently come online with apprenticeships, but we are still waiting for numerous ones coming online in terms of legal. There isn't any legal apprenticeship. So we do have other officers who may be interested. Same in the trades. There is only still certain trades that are covered by apprenticeships. There is a vast number of apprenticeships, anything from a greenkeeper to an accountant. However, they're not all there, but we have a very diverse range of staff. We're still very much encouraging people to take up apprenticeships. But at this point in time, we are maxing on what we need to do, and we have sufficient money for that. So that's why I said I wasn't concerned with the reduction in the apprentice levy funding.
And we don't expect that to change in the next 5 years?
Not in the next 5 years in terms of what we're projecting at the moment. I have projected beyond 5 years.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hook, and then I'll go to Councillor de Gaulle.
Thank you, Chair. Of course, better off people will get 40% tax saving as opposed to a 20% tax saving for people who are not so well off. So it definitely benefits better paid employees. But what I'm concerned of from an admin purpose, if you start sacrificing your salary, how does it then work when you get pay rises and you get differentials between other people in different grades? Because some people are going to be on a lower salary. So if you get a 5% pay rise, do you then have to up your salary sacrifice on your AVCs by that 5% so that it all ties up again, you know?
No, the AVCs is entirely up to you how much you actually contribute. So the 5%, if you go, we're not going to get a 5% pay rise in local government. So should we get the 1.75 that is currently on the table, whatever it may be, should we get that, an employee can say, well, I'll just keep my £50 contribution that I'm paying at the moment, or I'm going to up it to £55, £60, whatever. That's entirely up to that employee. That is their financial affairs to deal with, and that is all done through the portal as opposed to actually through the council, as it were. So it's just an instruction that comes through. So it doesn't get adjusted by us. It's not accounted for there. Every single deduction, if somebody wanted to change it on a monthly basis, they can change that on a monthly basis, and it is just straight through the portal that they do that.
So your salary is not actually the lowest salary then? That seems a bit funny.
Sorry, say that again.
Well, to me, if you get a salary sacrifice, you go from being, I don't know, 25,000 a year to being 24,500 a year.
Yes.
So, and then you get a 5% increase.
Yes, it would go.
Well, I've
it would
obviously
go up.
not in the past
Yeah.
when people did get 5% increases. So, you know, you never know, might need it. But then how does that work? Because you're in the books then as 24.5, aren't you?
It just fluctuates in terms on the pay rise side. Yes, it just fluctuates. And as long as you've always got, but it's always looking at what your deduction would want to be. So yes, your national insurance and taxes looked at on a monthly basis every time you want to make a deduction. As I say, if you didn't want to make a deduction a month, it wouldn't. It just looks at what you're looking. You can set it as a percentage of your salary, or you can set it as a lump sum each month. And if that fluctuates with your pay awards or your incremental progression, you've got full control over that. Okay. And as I say, there's a ready reckoner on the portal that employees can have full control over that. Thanks.
Councillor Dugon.
Yes, I appreciate from past life, some of these things can get quite complex, but as you said, it does sound to me as though it is quite flexible in as much as an employee can decide how much they feel they can afford to put aside in effect, same way as they might put into a different savings account. But this is a different way of saving for a longer term for their retirement. So from what you're saying, it's flexible in that the majority of staff, if they're contributing to the pensions, making pension contributions, will be eligible for it. And just to clarify that, you said that there's an existing AVC and this is a new flexibility that previous doesn't exist in the existing one. Is that, have I understood that correctly?
That's right. We're not offering, AVCs have been around obviously for many years. This is just simply a new way of administrating AVCs. So yes, it is called a different scheme purely because a salary sacrifice scheme through HMRC has to be a defined scheme on its own right. But the AVC that has been around, it's exactly the same principle. However, it's just administered in a different manner. So
it's obviously financially more attractive, as you said, than the existing AVC, which potentially a lot of existing, if they can transfer their current AVC into this.
They certainly can, or they can leave their existing AVC to sit there and do it, or not do anything, or not take up AVC wise. They will get a letter to say, what would you like to do as part of the implementation process?
So, I mean, I think from my perspective, this is something which you mentioned that you'd got support from the unions. It's something that, again, alongside pay scales and increments and all the other aspects that the unions can advise on, they would presumably refer people to a qualified financial advisor if their members wanted that sort of support. Absolutely. Before making a decision on it.
As part of the package, as part of being on the, I mentioned it was on a portal, employees can go on and they can attend webinars. There's over 25 webinars and it can range from, I'd like to take up AVCs now because I am in my latter years, or I'm a new apprentice and I'd like to learn more about AVCs, etc. There's a whole host of different, there's a lot of education, that's what I'm trying to say, on the portal for employees to be able to access. And as part of the rollout and the implementation, that's a key part of the education side. And there's obviously no pressure, as I've already said, to actually implement this as all a voluntary basis.
So I suppose in terms of, I would just say from experience, the only experience I've had with the salary sacrifice was the bike loan scheme, which again, it has the financial advantage that the cost is taken out before tax. You're not paying tax effectively on the money that is coming from that loan, and this presumably works in a similar sort of way.
It's exactly the same
And
way.
as you say, the national insurance is saved as well, because that's not being paid over on the money that you're getting going into your pot as opposed to into your current salary. So I think from the point of view of it being accessible to all, I do accept obviously that it may well be more of interest to people who are looking to retire in the next 5 years or whatever, who think they want to increase their sort of pot of money they've got going to have available when they retire. But it is open to anybody at any age, and it's something which potentially could help raise awareness of how pensions work and the benefits of long-term financial planning for all employees. Just one other point. I mean, you said about, or one of the concerns was that, as with any salary sacrifice, obviously it's reducing the money going to the exchequer and potentially increasing the, well, I suppose it's a benefit to the pension pot in the short term, because they're getting more money coming in, and then obviously in due course we're paying more out once people are drawing on the pension. But would you say that this is a relatively small, in terms of the amount of money that we're talking about compared to the total pension contributions, or the amount that the exchequer is losing out on it? It is quite a small proportion, isn't it, of the
I think I quoted
total
earlier.
amount.
I think I quoted earlier. It's only 3% of our employees that are actually taking up AVCs. As I say, I haven't got a vast amount of experience in terms of York, but from my former employer, I would say it's about communication. But one, obviously, the big government drive is about saying about pensions, investing for your future.
And obviously, I suppose if you look at it in the global sense, the exchequer might be losing out money now, but then once you're drawing your pension, there's less people going to be dependent on benefits if they've got a secure pension coming from that. So it swings and roundabouts, both from the pension authorities at point perspective and also from the exchequer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll come back to you in a second. Councillor Kilbane, I think my questions again would be primarily following on from Councillor Kilbane's on the financial section. I think as Councillor de Gorn has just done, there is a cost to the exchequer in enjoying this scheme. HMRC have approved it, and in that sense it is a potential benefit through a salary sacrifice to our staff, and I could understand why the local trade unions would support it, and obviously in that sense one way that you can help plan for your retirement, and for those in the relatively fortunate position to be able to do so. Just to go over those financial figures though, so the projections, and I appreciate their projections from the company involved, are that there would be an approximate 30,000 annual saving to City of York Council based on what they would anticipate those currently making those contributions will do. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
And then in the financial implications section, it talks about the cost to the council being well within that annual saving envelope. And have you got any sense of what that administrative cost to CYC would be as part of that 30,000?
To be fair, I haven't, but I can get that and follow up with that.
Thank you very much. Because yes, please, and I think you could send it around all of the committee, because that then goes to that next question in terms of the cost. So the 4.5% cost, is that paid by the employees because they're accessing obviously those savings, or is that 4.5% accumulated and paid for by the council?
It's accumulated and paid for by the council, but offset with the savings that we get from employees.
And presumably it's a as you say, the more people save, but the more we save. So it goes up, but our saving goes up.
Yes, it goes up in
okay.
parallel effectively.
So I think as well as confirmation to the committee on what the saving would be, it would be useful to see that chart of if employees suddenly, more than the 110 join, which you'd anticipate they would, and 110 that are currently in start to make bigger contributions, which you'd anticipate that they would, what's the overall impact? And equally, I wonder whether if we did approve this as a committee, it would be useful to get an appropriately generalised report back on what has been the uptake of existing members or new members, and some oversight of that long-term saving. Because obviously, if the administrative cost is 10,000 to 30,000, that's not a huge amount. But actually, if the figures start to go up and suddenly we're saving significantly more annually, what are we going to do with that? And some oversight of that, I think, would be useful.
Can I suggest, Chair, that we potentially bring back an annual report in terms of savings? And that could be, I don't know whether it's actually possible for the other salary sacrifices as well. You could have an idea of that.
Yeah, that would be useful. And then just going over the cost to employees, is there any cost that they pay to access this, or
No,
that the
there
company
isn't.
takes?
No,
Right. So
as an employee, you don't sign up to it and get charged for it, if that's what you're referring to.
Yeah.
No, they
so
don't.
there's no charges, there's no ongoing costs,
No,
because in essence, the council is picking
It's
that
paying
up
it
from
up.
the savings.
Yeah. it is actually a good recruitment and retention benefit as well. I would say that we have been asked if we do it by a couple of recruitment campaigns.
Thank you. Councillor Kilbane.
I thought for a second, Councillor Ashton, you were about to propose a deferral until we had that information of those projected cost benefit analysis, basically, which is essentially what you were looking for, because I think it would be wise to have that information before making the decision. It did make me think, in terms of cost to employees, we'd need to check there was no costs in terms of reduced national insurance contributions that they may be paying. It would be unlikely, but potentially could happen. Just in terms of the information, I wasn't sure from what you were saying, Helen, that HMRC had approved this scheme. I thought you said that PS Tax had said that HMRC had approved the scheme, and before making a decision on it, I'd want to know that it was absolutely bona fide okay with HMRC, as Councillor Hook raised. And the other bit of information I would want to know is the spread of the benefit, if you like. So it would be really useful if, as well as sending me the number of grade 12s and upwards that we currently employ, which you said you do, if you could just give me the whole profile of the council workforce as to how many people we employ in each different salary band, because I'm getting the feeling here that actually the people who are at the lowest end are the most unlikely to take up this scheme, and I'd want to know how we were going to spread the benefit, because I think it's really, really important that we follow schemes that gets money into the lowest paid pockets, not least because they're far more likely to spend it in the local economy than the higher paid staff of the council who are likely to spend it elsewhere or save it. Okay, so I'd like that information, please.
Is that on? Yeah, sorry. Yes, that's fine, Councillor Kilbane. I can get that information for you. But just to go back on the VIVUP scheme, that has a lot of benefits on there as well, which is obviously available, and employees all can access that, and that includes high street. It's called VIVUP, V-I-V up. It's just the platform that this scheme is actually on. But I would say that a lot of employees are benefiting from that as well. Already the access to it has been increased since we implemented it. So that has high street vouchers and all sorts and discounts, both locally and nationally. So I can safely say that employees are benefiting from the fact that we've got that there, and that's obviously at every level as well.
Just on that final point, for the potential sake of harmony, it talks in the recommendation of the scheme coming into effect in May, and not a fan of deferring, but if we did bring it back in March, what would it mean for that time scale?
It'll be put back to approximately August. I've already asked that question.
And why is that?
Because the number of implementations that they've got in the pipeline, and we've already delayed once, so we've effectively missed our slot.
That's the company though, you mean?
That is the company, yes.
Okay.
And unfortunately, we can't do it without them doing all of the,
So employees would have to wait a couple of months to access the scheme, in essence, if the company's stuck with that.
the implementation would not, yes, implementation would be August, but then it wouldn't actually, employees wouldn't be able to get the benefit till the 1st of October by the time they've gone through all the process. And that's the administration side.
Okay. Don't know whether colleagues have any thoughts or views. Agree that it would be useful to see the HMRC confirmation. Now you can infer that they're not going to allow such a large number of councils to be doing this already, but nonetheless, seeing what the HMRC say in black and white would, I think, be useful. Equally, it would be useful to see those financial projections. I guess there's a question for colleagues as to whether we feel we can agree it and get that information, or agree it, delegate it subject to getting that information, or whether we do want to bring it back, but you've got that delay to accessing the benefits. Councillor Duggan.
My preference would be to agree today, as has been pointed out, we have deferred this for 1 month already on the basis of wanting it to be a decision of councillors rather than the chief operating officer, as was previously the case. I think we can certainly ask for some reassurance before implementation, if that's part of our decision, to say that we have that confirmation, absolutely, that it is an HMRC approved scheme, if that is the concern. But I would have concern about delaying it from the point of view of employees, who may want to start making contributions. If that is delayed, then obviously they're going to lose out in terms of the contributions they've made or would have made in that period of time. And not everybody's, as it's been said, not everyone's affluent enough to be able to put it into a pot and then have that money to put in when they're ready. They're more likely to want to, particularly lower paid, are more likely to want to start paying small amounts each month rather than trying to save it up and lose out on the benefits that they would have had. So my view is we should be approved going ahead with it, but with that, as part of the decision is to have the reassurance before it's implemented that Councillor Kilbane has been asking for.
Helen?
All I would say is we're on a very tight deadline of literally the next couple of days to be able to hit our May deadline. And yes, I'll do everything in my power to be able to get hold of that HMRC. I'm fairly certain it's just on their website as well, all the details. But if I was to forward that to you, I would want kind of a nod that we can get this through for the benefit, because otherwise we will lose this slot. And I know that's the case from when I've implemented in my previous authority. We missed a slot and we had to wait a number of months.
Councillor Kilbane?
I would be for deferral until we've got the information that we need to make the decision. Not just because of the potential risk to staff, but I want to be sure that this is a scheme that would be benefiting the lowest paid staff. And right now, I'm not sure it does. And obviously, making the decision now will benefit the highest paid staff, because they're the ones who will be able to start making contributions straight away. Whereas if you're only managing to put in an extra £5 a month for the next few months, the added impact to your savings is not going to be that great. I'd sooner make sure that we got it right.
Councillor Hook, it's your decision. So as I sit and don't say anything.
You've heard of councils that have done investment schemes that went up the spout and then ended up paying a lot of money. So the guarantee that other councils have done it isn't really a safety to my mind. So I would like the assurance from HMRC.
Sounds like that's a deferral on that basis. I think if we were deferring it, presumably we have an SMU meeting on, if Robert's quicker on the dates that I am. 21st of March. I think the things that we've discussed, correct me if I'm wrong, are confirmation of HMRC status, the financial projections based on numbers joining, and obviously savings to CYC, and equally that we'd like a further report back at the point we were to approve it. And then Councillor Kilbane's point about impact across the workforce, and whether again there was information available from the company as to what they could do to target everybody and make sure that it does reach those that you really do want to help, rather than those who will automatically be looking at these things. Does that cover all the points that we'd want to see a bit more information on, Councillor Kilbane?
Yeah, and that spread of where the workforce is, how many people we've got in each different salary band.
Helen?
Yes, I've got how many staff we employ at each salary scale, salary band, so you call them, don't you? Salary bands, yes. I've got that. I've got a HMRC approved evidence status from PS Tax. The spread of the
Sorry,
benefit.
no from HMRC.
Sorry.
PS Tax are bound to say it's
yeah.
HMRC approved. Well, I fully approve of the bars that I run, I think they're great. But, I would say that, wouldn't I?
The spread of the benefit, one thing, I cannot give you how many employees have taken up the AVC because that's their own personal financial situation. I can't give you that detail. Is that what you were wanting?
No, we've got 100. We know we've got 110.
We've got
people paying
110.
in.
Yeah.
Do we know what salary bands they're in? That's what we're after, because that's what
Right.
tells you who this is benefiting and who it isn't.
Or I think
Yeah, if I can intervene, sorry, on that particular bit of information, I would just have to look at it, because there's certain elements below a certain grade that are private. And so I would just have to look at that particular element that Councillor Kilbane has raised and come back to the committee on that bit.
Thank you. I think, and it might be something that the supplier could tell us. I think it's that best practice case study of impact across different ranges of salaries and what presumably they can do to make sure that there is some consistency, rather than wanting individual information. It's some assurances. Now it might be on that portal and the information that they have that could be pulled out.
Yeah, it's also about people being accessing this information. Obviously, we send information out on our intranet, etc. We also send information out for managers to cascade, which includes toolbox talks, etc. But we cannot force effectively people to read this information and look at it. As I say, there's a wealth of webinars, etc., that people can access and download, not just at specific times. They can self-access those at all times as well. But yes, I'd like to think that this can be communicated widely, but I can't guarantee that they'll take it up.
So I think because you could in essence bring the same report, but with an annex to the March meeting that just picks up those points and brings a little bit more information. And presumably as well that you could have a conversation with the company involved, and because again by the sounds of the conversation, most of the committee, with the support of the trade unions, would accept this as a benefit that employees can access. We just need those assurances about the scheme and the profile of the scheme and how it would work in practice, and then work with the company to ensure there's as little delay as possible whilst we get those assurances in place.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay. Looking to colleagues, Councillor de Gaunt, are you content with that as a sort of way forward? I appreciate that there is a delay, but it would enable us to get that information and then have a look.
Well, I personally do think that, we should be getting on with it, but, given the majority seem to be in favour of delaying again, it does seem a bit of a shame that since we've delayed it for a month, these questions weren't asked at the point when we deferred it a month ago, rather than waiting until now to ask them.
The reason that we delayed it, Councillor de Gaunt, was it was wholly inappropriate for the Chief Operating Officer to decide whether or not to give himself. Should we just do it one at a time? whether or not to give himself a 40% pay rise. And the Chief Operating Officer accepted that it was wholly inappropriate for him to do that and was also keen for us to defer it. So, I wouldn't be blaming it on the process that we've got here. We've done the right thing by not leaving this with the Chief Operating Officer, and now we're doing the right thing by making sure this scheme is sound and meets the needs of the staff.
So in terms of a recommendation, Robert, what have you got recorded? And presumably whether we should do a vote, but what I'm seeing is Councillor Cobain and myself in favour of a deferral, and obviously the 3 or 4 items of additional information to come back as an annex to the next meeting as soon as possible. Don't know, Councillor Gorman, if you want to record it as an abstention or a vote against?
No, I'm happy to, given the majority view is that we should defer. I think obviously we need to get as much information as has been asked for, but just I think want to put on record that if people who would have taken part, are disappointed, it is because there have been some questions raised of whether or not this is a legitimate HMRC scheme, which, although on all the evidence that I've heard, it does sound like it is. So.
And to ensure that can be done as swiftly as possible. Have you got enough in terms of the areas that we'd want more information on as well?
I believe so, and I can always double check it on the webcast as well if there is anything that I'm not sure on, but I think I've got it all down.
Great. Thank you very much, and thank you for that as well, Ellen, and taking us through that and all of those questions. So that then takes us on to agenda item 7, which is the work plan. Starts on page 17. So obviously we've got the change in that item will get added again to the March agenda. And Helen, anything you'd like to introduce or add?
Sorry, workforce demographics were discussed at the last meeting, and that's just been omitted on here. So I expect that to come in June 22, May or June. I'll confirm that as we have the information. It just depends where the meetings lie. So that'll be workforce demographics as at the 31st of March 2022. And just to note again, Chair, the amendment required for the 17th of January 2022. What we presented was workforce demographics as at the 31st of December 2021, not 31st of March 2021.
Thank you very much. I'm sure we'll make that amendment and add that item. The only one to add from my perspective is we had a conversation when we agreed the recruitment panels for the corporate director, children, young people, and in adult social care, that we would look moving forward about the use of recruitment consultants, for want of a better word, and just to make sure that we were getting best value, but equally considering across the field for those key recruitment processes. And I know it needed to be looked at quickly in order to secure those ones I've just mentioned, but more if we could have a looking forward report and a more general one looking at that whole topic, because I know some people have in the past not wanted us to spend anything at all on that, and others, obviously there's various options within that envelope as well, but whenever you think, Helen, that would be sensible for the work plan.
Yeah, I'd obviously gain some quotes this time round for that, so I can formulate that into a report for you. That's not a problem.
Great. So if once perhaps you have a chat with Robert and work out which date into the future. Any other questions or points from colleagues? So if not, with those changes, we're noting the work plan. Takes us on to agenda item 8. So again, I'll check with Robert, but as far as I'm aware, there's no urgent business. So thank you to everybody for coming. And as we agreed, thank you very much. At the start of the meeting, we'll now move exclusion of press and public so that we consider agenda item 9. Thank you.